Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Evidence, and in today's video I am going to show you how to use Python Lambda function, and towards the end I will show you a little bit on how to use .apply method in Python. So with that being said, grab your popcorn and let's get started. So to begin with, I'm going to create my Jupyter notebook that I'm going to be using for this. So I'm gonna call it lambda.ipynb. That is how you create a Jupyter notebook. And here I'm gonna change the kernel to MLOps. I know this environment has the libraries that I will need for this tutorial. So to begin with, first I am going to bring in the libraries that I'm going to need. So these are the libraries that I need. I don't think I need all of this actually. Yeah, I don't need all of it. I won't be needing Seaborn or Matplotlib or NumPy. Let's just leave it there. Let's go ahead and run this. Now I am going to bring in the data. So here I did from data prep import data. I have a file here called data prep, and this data prep is just reading the CSV file that I'm using for this tutorial, and I'm bringing this CSV file here, this function into my notebook, and I'm basically saying my data frame is equal to this data right here. I'm just doing df.head, and this is just me verifying that the data works. So do not get confused, like where is the data coming from? The data is being read right here. So with that being said, now that we have some data, let's go ahead and begin work. So there is a couple of documentations, and I'm gonna put this documentation link in the comment section below. Personally, I love documentations. So this is the main thing we are talking about today, and this is the documentation for it, and one of the good ones that I found. Of course, there's many documentations on how to use Python Lambda function, but this is one of the good ones. So I'm gonna click on this, and I'm gonna put this documentation in the comment section below. But before we begin, let's first start by defining what a Lambda function is. What exactly is a Lambda function and what can it do? Lambda function, in its simplest terms, can take multiple arguments, but can only have one expression. Keep this in mind and remember it. I'm gonna come back to this point multiple times. It can take multiple arguments, but can only have one expression. So in the simplest term, think of it like a shorthand version of a function that can only have a return statement and no other expressions. And I'm gonna show you an example of this. I'm gonna build a Lambda function, and I'm also gonna show you how to replicate that Lambda function using a regular Python function, so you can kind of see it side by side. For the longest time, it took me a very long time to understand Lambda functions, so I'm very passionate about making sure that you understand Lambda function. All right. So this is the basic syntax of a Lambda function. You have the Lambda argument, and then you have a semicolon, and then you have the expression. So the expression here will be the equivalent of the return statement, and then you have your argument on the left hand side. So with that being said, let's go ahead and look at some examples. So let's start by doing x is equal to, if I can type, x is equal to lambda b minus 10. So this is a very simple Lambda function, right? So in this situation, b is equal to the parameter, and b minus 10 is equal to the expression, the return statement. Right. So if you look at this very simple and lambda function, it begins with the keyword lambda, like I showed you here. Keyword lambda followed by the argument, in this case, which is b, and the expression, which is the return statement, is b minus 10. So let's go ahead and run this. And if you just type in x as it is, it will give you the position of this lambda function in memory. It just says function main.lambda b. Now, to actually get a return statement with this lambda, like to actually get an argument back, you have to replace b with a value. In this case, we're going to be replacing it with 25 to get the result. So here I'm going to do x parenthesis 25. So basically, right, what I'm doing here, I'm putting it in 25 for the value of b. And if we go ahead and run this, then we get 15 because we are saying 25 minus 10. That's how we get 15. And so this is at the very simplest version of like a lambda function. And remember what I said of like, think of it like a shorthand version of a function that can only have a return statement and no other expressions. Well, if that is true, then we should be able to replicate this as a normal Python function. If we go ahead and replicate this lambda function in a regular Python function, you do something like def. Let's call it x data, for example, and let's put in b for the argument and a column, and then here we do return b minus 10. So this is a simple Python function where we are saying b is the argument and b minus 10 is the return statement. Same thing right here, b is the argument, b minus 10 is the return statement. Right, so remember I said shorthand version of a function. So if we go ahead and run this, and then if we put in 25 for b again, we should get the same value. So here we'll do x data, and in parentheses we put in 25, and if we go ahead and run it, and once again we get 15. So whenever you're trying to write a lambda function and you're struggling, maybe you have an easier time if you wrote it as a regular Python function and then convert that into a lambda function. And earlier I also told you that a lambda function can have multiple arguments but only one expression. Well, let me demonstrate that. So let's use x2 for example, and here we're going to do x2 is equal to lambda, the keyword lambda, we do c comma d. So remember before we only had one argument, which is b, but now we have two arguments, c and d, and our return statement is going to be c times d, which is our expression. So this is the argument, this is the expression, or the equivalent of the return statement. So let's go ahead and run this. And we are gonna do what we did earlier. So instead of just calling instead of just having b right here, we are going to have a value for c and a value for d. So in this case, I'm gonna do 4,5, and I'm gonna put a little note here. So when you go back and look at this notebook, you remember what was going on. So here we're gonna do replace c and d with values, and we're gonna run this, and we have the value 20, which is what we expect, right? Because here we said we want the value to be c times d. And of course you can replicate this using a regular Python function again. So we'll do def, we'll do x, let's call it x2 data, and in parentheses we'll do c comma d, and we'll do return c times d. We'll go ahead and run this. And down here, we'll call this function x2 data. And we'll put in 4 for C, 5 for D. And we have the value 20 once again. So I hope this has kind of helped to solidify, how Lambda functions work. But don't leave yet. I still have more stuff to show you. So you don't have to use Lambda functions independently. You can use them as part of a nested function inside another regular Python function. So a function inside a function, right? So I'm going to show you an example of I'm using a Lambda function inside a Lambda function. So I'm going to define a Python function called def. I'll call it function. I'm going to do m. And for the return statement, I'm going to do return lambda b divided by m. Right, so in this situation, I have a Lambda function as the return statement of a regular Python function. So this is a function within a function. Let's get and run this. When you if you try to call this function without passing in any value for m, it is going to throw an error. And so whenever you call this function, make sure you pass in a value for m. So if you do something like test data error, I'm creating this error on purpose, equal to func parentheses, and then let's run this. Boom, it tells you, and it gives you an error. It says function missing one required positional argument m. So whenever you have a function like this and you intend to call it, make sure you pass in a value for your argument. So let's go ahead and call this properly. So we're gonna do test data is equal to func, and we're gonna pass in 5 for the value of m, and we're gonna run this, and that was successful. And right here, if we just type in test data, it is not gonna give us any result. It's just gonna tell us the position of test data in memory, and that's it. Right, so you have to for you to actually get any meaningful result, you have to put in values for b, so that you get a b divided by m as your answer. So now that we know, we need a value for b in order to get a result, we are going to repeat this, right? So here we are going to do test2. We're going to do equal to test data, and in parentheses we're going to put in 20, and we are going to run this. And if we type in test data here, test2, and we get a value of 4 as expected. So I don't want you to get confused what happened here. So what happened here is, like, I said test data is equal to this function, and I'm passing a value of 5 for m, and then I passed in a value of 20 for b by doing test data parentheses 20. So this data right here, parentheses 20. So when is it a good time to use a nested function? Why would you want to do a function inside a function? So you can use this type of nested function when you know the value of b, but you don't know the value of m, or when you have a situation where m keeps changing, or both values keep changing. So that's kind of when you may want to use a nested function like this one. You could also call it in one go. So here I called it twice. So first I called it and I gave it the value of 5. Then I called it again and gave it the value of 20. You could call it in one time by doing function. You can do function and then you pass in the value for m, in this case, which is 5. And if you're using VS Code like I am doing, it kind of gives you this little preview of your function, which may kind of helps you to remember what you were doing. So I'm passing 5 for b, which is the first parameter. No, I'm passing 5 for m, which was the first argument. And then I'm passing the value for, passed in 20 for b, which was the second argument, and it should still give me the same value for that I had above. Oops, we have an error. That's not how you pass it, and you have to pass it as individual. So you pass in 5, then you pass in 20. And now we have the value of 4 as before. So yeah, you could do it individualized or you could do it at once, but I just wanted to show you that you could have a function within a function. You could also use functions to write if-else statements. I'm gonna show you this. Actually, I'm gonna show you how to use it to do .apply method. It's kind of like an if-else statement and also .apply method also. Let me add this here. You can use Lambda functions to write if-else statements and use it with Python .apply method. And let's look at an example of that. So I'm gonna do df.head, and as you can see right here, I have 21 columns. But if you start to scroll, you see this triple dot right here. It means that everything is not being shown. So to make everything show up, to make all the columns show up, I have to set the maximum column to 999. This will force all the columns to show up. Now that I run this again, when I scroll to the right, as you can see, there's no triple dot in the middle. All the columns are showing up. So that's a really cool trick. But that's not what I wanted to show you. So here, as you can see, I have a column called education level. And basically, I am going to write an if-else statement that basically says that if the value of education level is high school, then the new column, I'm going to create a new column that has the values of 0 and 1. And this column is basically going to be if the education level here had the value of high school, then that new column will get the value of 0 or else of 1. So let me show you that. Here I'm doing df churn. Churn is, I'll just call df education, just df the education, right? So I'm creating a new column that I'm calling education, and I'm basically doing df, and I'm saying education. I wanted to select education level, and I'm doing .apply, and then I'm doing a lambda function. So start with the lambda keyword, and I'm gonna do val 0 if val is equal to high school, so as you can see, this is basically I'm doing an if-else statement. So basically I'm saying if the value of education level, which is this column right here, is high school. I want you to give me the value of 0, but if the value is anything but high school, then I want you to give me the value of 0. And I want these values to be the input for this new column called education that I'm going to create. So if you go all the way to the end here, as you can see, there's no column called education at the end. But after I run this, there's going to be a new column called education. So this is what I mean by you can do an if-else statement using a Lambda function. I'll go ahead and run this. And here, if I do df.head again, and let's go all the way to the end. Now we have a column called education. And I was looking at this, I was like, wait, this is wrong. We know the first row says high school. So this should be the value of 0, but it looks like I spelled school wrong. So let's go ahead and fix this. So how do you spell school? You spell it with a C right there. So let's go ahead and run this again. And I'll run this. And now that looks right. So we know the first row, it says high school. So this correctly says 0, our education column. And if we scroll to the right, as you can see, we have graduate, high school, uneducated. So we should have 1, 1, 0, 1. And that's what we have, 1, 1, 0, 1. So that's an example of how you could use a Lambda function to create an if-else statement and then use it with python.apply method to make changes to your data frame. To get access to the notebook that I use in today's video, just go to machinelearningeducation.com/free, and I'm gonna put the link to this in the description below. Once you get here, this is what the page looks like, and you sign up. You check your email for your login information, and you log in. When you log in, this is what you will see. You will see tutorial Python notebooks, and this is where this notebook is gonna be. So any tutorial that I do on my YouTube channel, I put all that tutorial notebook in here. It just makes it easier for you and for me to keep all the tutorial notebooks in one location and make it easier to find. So if you come here to tutorial Python notebook, I'm going to have this notebook uploaded here in this platform. And you get access to the tutorial Python notebook, but you also get access to other free goodies that I have in here. And I regularly add stuff in here. Yeah, there's a lot of good things that are in here. You just have to come in and you have to explore. And we have free data science books. You know, like I'm searching the internet and I find a free data science book. I upload it here so that you have access to it as well. You know, so just go to machinelearningeducation.com/free to sign up and get access to this notebook and my other notebooks. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and tell your friends about it. Thank you, and I'll talk to you on the next video. Bye.